Hey there, welcome to the Reinsurance Podcast, the place where we dive into all things reinsurance, the coolest part of insurance. We're your hosts, Jerod and Ben, a couple of ex-practitioners who loved the industry so much we founded Supercede to tackle some of its biggest headaches. And we're here to share our insights and stories with expert guests as we uncover what's really going on in the industry.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Reinsurance Podcast, where I'm delighted to say we have a special guest with us. Welcome to the studio, a different Jerod. We've got Jerod Blakestad, co-founder of Monoline, with us in the studio, rather than Jerod Lee, who's off on his honeymoon. But welcome, Jerod. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me today.
Delighted to have you. I also get to sit in our Jerod's chair, which is
even better.
A change of view, as I listen to your story as a co-founder of a very exciting technology-driven insurance business, so we'll dive into everything that's involved with that. But I thought maybe as a start, you could give us your own story as to how you got involved in this weird and wonderful industry.
Right. No, that's great. Yeah, so I've been in the insurance industry for 22 years. Started right out of college. Actually worked on the insurance carrier side. Started in claims, and then shortly thereafter realized I wanted to be on the broker side. So I actually kind of joined one of the large American brokers, and then left to start my own agency. I bought an existing agency.
Very cool.
And then shortly thereafter that, really started to get more interested on the technology side of the house. So we started a company called OpenTrack, same four co-founding partners as Monoline. And then after we sold that company, we started to kind of look at what was next, and now we're here.
Very exciting. And so you've been on that journey. You've been there on the front line, so to speak, actually, breaking business. What made you think this is missing something?
Yeah, in the personal lines market in the United States, really it's kind of been like left behind. Like the technology solutions that have been developed over the last decade, say, are very rarely focused on personal lines as a whole.
Sure.
They tend to make their way into the employee benefit space or the commercial market, or even like more kind of top of the house solutions. Very rarely do they make it down to the desk level at, an actual insurance agent out selling a policy. And that's what we felt was missing. Just seeing that over the past few decades and seeing their job get increasingly harder, it was very clear that they could use some help.
Yeah, I can completely relate to that. It does feel sometimes like the old days of computers, when computers used to be massive, like a room-sized computer, right? The insurance as an industry, it seems, because we see it in reinsurance as well, seems to think of technology like that. We need a big technology thing to put in a room at the back that everybody brings stuff to from time to time, rather than this thing that actually helps the people to do their job on the front line, right? Which is
completely agree.
Yeah, quite entertaining. So tell me about Monoline in particular. I understand you have a bit of a specialism.
We do.
What is that specialism? Tell us
very,
about it.
Very singularly focused right now. Our first product is a standalone personal umbrella, $1 to $5 million. Honestly, pretty straightforward. Just as far as the actual insurance product itself goes, it's a very simple policy. The real differentiation for us, though, is on that user experience. It's streamlining what normally takes hours or days or weeks to accomplish, and being able to do it in more of a kind of what you're used to in the rest of your life with technology. Yeah. More of a modern day experience, if you will.
Very cool. And you used the term umbrella, or personal umbrella in this case. What's that bringing together, though, just for people who haven't bought umbrella or understand what it is?
So it's basically an excess liability policy. So if you would exhaust your auto liability policy, you're in a bad wreck, you do something that's causing somebody else harm, you're sued for whatever reason, or the same thing with your personal liability off of your home policy. If that policy is ever exhausted, it's kind of there as hopefully like a catch-all.
Makes sense.
To kind of help. And in today's world, everything's so incredibly expensive that lawsuits are through the roof. Medical bills are obviously increasingly higher than they used to be. So everyone needs one. Ours is a little bit different because if you're unable to get it through, typically in the U.S., you would get your liability policy, your umbrella, through the homeowner's carrier. But there's massive disruption throughout the entire insurance space, especially in the property world, like if you live in Texas or Florida or California. And as those policies are now broken apart, there's a real need to find a standalone solution.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it sounds, I mean, you put it very simply, but it sounds like it would be a complicated thing for maybe some buyers to get their heads around. What role does an account exec or a broker play in this journey for them?
Yeah, I mean, it's their job is already very hard because they're starting out having to explain why there's all of these changes to begin with, right? So over the past, like if you live in the state of California, your homeowner's insurance over the last 5 years has more than doubled. I mean, it's like 30% year-over-year increase.
Wow.
So back when I was a broker, and I was in the private client space primarily, it was already hard to sell insurance, like because it's going to be expensive and you're playing more of a true advisor role of like helping someone protect their wealth. So there's a lot of lack of education already. Yeah. So the job then was hard, right? But I was selling like kind of flat, like you're spending $10,000 and now it's $10,000. It's just like fixing problems. Now you're saying you're spending $10,000, but next year you're going to spend 20. Yeah. So the job's already hard. So there's a lot of education that they have to provide, but then it's really helping them understand like, what risk do you have? We live in the most litigious country in the world, unfortunately. So it's explaining the role of the policy, why they need it, why it's going to be more expensive, and then really kind of having to explain all of the things that are happening. So yeah, I bet. It's not an easy job right now.
And I suppose some of those people have probably been affected by insurers pulling out of some areas as well.
100%.
That must be kind of good for you guys, I guess, in some ways, as it brings you customers, but a pretty tragic backdrop that seems to be.
It is. I mean, it's
continuing.
It's already kind of a thankless job. Yeah. But then on top of it, you have carriers exiting, you have underwriting rules changing in states, rate increases, all of the above. So yeah, it's very demanding,
challenging, tough stuff. So how does your tech make this all a little bit easier, at least for those on the front lines?
Yeah, the intention is just to give them time, right? Like. Our actual mission is to empower people with more time. Like that's really all we try to do. And so if you can shave off a few minutes here, if it's one less task to have to remind yourself to do there, those are the things that when you compile them over a significant amount of time, right? I mean, we're able to kind of guarantee we can cut your time in half on these policies. Nice. It's really probably more than that. Yeah. But that's really the magic of it, right? Is like trying to give them time back to do the things that are way more important than placing a standalone umbrella.
Yeah. And how important is that technology piece the other way? So obviously understanding, as you've said, how it helps the users of the technology. Is it attractive when you go and secure capital or reinsurance for Monoline? You know, are they excited to be working with somebody who's actually got some systems?
For sure. And I think really more so on the data front, right? Like our ability to capture data that we think is going to be meaningful over the long haul. Everything we're doing is really to hopefully provide a very stable capacity, right? Like we don't want to be the company that's taking massive rate increases or pulling out of a state or changing. If anything, we want to be adding more depth to our product, right? That's really only possible if we continually learn and gather the right data. I think the differentiation between us and a lot of the more legacy companies that are there is it's a little too late. Like they have what they have, right? Yeah. But it's kind of hard to go in and all of a sudden go gather more data on it. And it's also just a big issue kind of across the industry as a whole where the data is it's parsed so poorly, right? Yeah. Like even within an agency, when we try to go in and collect data on an existing book, it's never put in the exact same way. So like as soon as you have any of that disruption, like the data's garbage.
Yeah, no, I can completely relate.
I'm sure
it comes downstream to us as well a lot of the time.
I'm sure it does
in the reinsurance world. Yeah, if we're lucky enough to get it. So that's a really interesting challenge to be grappling with, trying to get the data right. And we've seen, I guess, that as a sort of bigger, broader trend across a lot of spaces in the US market recently.
Yeah, for sure.
If I were to do a bit of a comparison in the way that Lemonade came along a number of years ago, went after the Geicos and the Progressives. Yeah. Who do you compare yourselves against as like they're doing it the old way, you know, we're here trying to shake things up and improve it. Like what's a sort of the old fashioned kind of equivalent that you point to and say, been there, that is no fun.
Yeah.
And it could be better for customers. That's why we're doing this.
Yeah. I mean, I think for the most part, all carriers kind of have some issues with this, right? Like the idea of either being stuck or tied to a legacy system that's kind of impossible to get away from, or having just the lack of resources that they need to build things the way that the customer actually wants them built.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing for us is just to actually build what they want and focus more on that piece of it. The policy is the policy, right? Like you can compare us against everybody else. It's a policy. I think the bigger kind of important piece is how you actually secure the policy and how efficiently you can make that process.
Yeah.
And that's really what I think is missing. I think it's been easy for companies who have sold a lot of policies, right? They have a ton of business. They're making a lot of money. It's really easy to just be like, no, this is how we do it. Yeah. And like, if you want it, great. And I think if you look at wholesalers or MGAs as a whole, the emphasis tends to be on securing capacity, like the ability to go get a policy. It really isn't about the efficiency of getting that policy. And that's, I think, how we're kind of separating ourselves from everybody else. It's not like, it's not about getting the policy. It's like, how do you actually do that?
That completely makes sense. And you mentioned there looking for ways, you know, to continually improve your product, working with, you know, what do customers actually want? I think you said, like, what role does that feedback play for you? How do you get feedback on your?
It's everything. I mean, it's literally everything. We started our first build of any sort with a customer council, and we still rely heavily on our customer councils.
Yeah.
We've kind of gone through different phases of, you know, the build and the process, and then starting to gather some actual user feedback and looking at like who are our power users.
Nice.
And gaining feedback from them. When we have the ability to make kind of real-time changes, all of our tech is in-house, right? Like we're not farming that out. The feedback becomes so important because there's small little things that our staff, who is interacting with agencies all day, including myself, but even like our CTO goes on agency visits, our lead developer goes on agency visits, and those conversations, they always result in something. And it's easy to be like, nope, this is what we do. But if you take the feedback's one thing, but what you do with it is everything, right? So that's, I think, been kind of our kind of game-changing approach to it is like, we want the feedback, but we're actually going to do something with it. When I worked on the insurance carrier side, you'd go out and see an agent and they'd be like, gosh, I wish that you could do this, or I wish the system did that. And it's always like, oh yeah, I'll go let somebody know. And then you go in the car and you put the note away. Like you're never going to bring it up.
Yeah.
Where we really do want to dive in heavy on anything that we're told and like go make the change, make it now.
Yeah. What's it like getting to see, because if you do these visits, getting to see people use your thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's the best.
Yeah, do they use it
the
like
best
you
part
expected?
of my job. Yeah, I mean, I think so. Once, it's so hard to break up someone's habit, right? I mean, like change is scary for people already, and getting them to like adopt something new is just tough. But if you're able to get them to use it once, they use it twice, they use it 5 times, use it, right? So it's like this snowball effect. I think that the most fun part for me going out on agency visits is, I started my career going out on agency visits, and now I'm kind of back to it. And along the way, I've literally done every job possible within the insurance space. So I have a different view and appreciation for the work that they're doing. It's very humbling, right? To like go in and see someone using your product and giving you feedback and giving you an idea that you get in the car and make one phone call and the whole team's excited about. Like that's really fun.
How do people like find out about you typically? Like, how do you distribute?
Yeah, so I mean, we started out really with all of the large national brokers has really kind of been our starting point. Nice. And then it's once we're in an agency and once we find that early adopter, which if you listen to anything I'm ever talking about, we talk heavily about early adopters, and I'm sure you get that. But as soon as you kind of identify that person, they're generally the ones to spread the word to the rest of the office. And everyone kind of looks at that one person, right? Yeah. Like, well, if they're doing it, then I want to try it. And that's really been kind of where the spread.
You have those change champions. But I guess it must be on quite a big scale. You know, how do you How has it spread? Did you start in a particular state, or how do you?
Not really, no. Yeah. So we're in 43 states right now.
Yeah.
By the end of next year, we'll be everywhere.
Yeah.
No, it was really like starting off with the context that we already had just from being in the industry, and those people that we know are open to like a new idea or suggestion on like there might be a better way to do it. Yeah. And then it kind of just takes care of itself from there from a spread standpoint.
Makes sense. And
it's a small world, right? The insurance industry is a very small world.
And it's nice, I'm sure, for all those people that you already knew to have you come back and visit them or tell them,
very
doing this thing. Do you want to get involved?
Yeah.
Yes.
At least they take the phone call. Yeah. Right? Like that's the hardest part.
Yeah. Do you do conferencing and that kind of thing?
We do. Yeah. So we'll be at the PRMA conference, which if you haven't ever attended, if you're interested in personal lines, it's great. Cool. So that's coming up here in October. Yeah. So we do a few of those type events where we're there kind of spreading the word.
Yeah. Very, very cool. And one thing I wanted to float by you was some of the changing trends we're seeing across the market. We already talked a little bit about the challenges of just catastrophe losses, etc., and what that's meaning. But one of the other big things that's been coming up a lot recently is this booming MGA and wholesale kind of world. Yeah. How does that affect you? What are you seeing from where you are in that market?
Yeah, I mean we're so heads down right now that we don't listen to a lot of the noise. Yeah. I mean, I think the MGA space and our own kind of perspective on that is like it's really hard to differentiate yourself and create value when you have access to a lot of different products that other people also have access to, right? So like then the only differentiation comes down to like dealing with a person that they like, and then they leave and go somewhere else, and then they start working with that, where we just believe heavily in like depth over breadth. Like we want to be the experts in personal umbrella. We want you to come to us because you have a need for personal umbrella. Yeah. Having 50 products overnight or, just continually kind of copying the other models that are out there, it's working. I mean, there's a ton of them that are great. But we would much rather just be like the company that you go to for umbrella.
Yeah. What would be, don't give away any trade secrets, obviously, but in the world of personal umbrella, is there still further to go, beyond what you've already created? Like,
there is.
How would it grow from here?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're part of the reason we're in London this week, outside of doing this, is to explore further products within that space. Nice. So there are some other things that are coming for sure.
Yeah, exciting.
Yeah.
And otherwise, company building going well, continuing to grow the mission. What are you looking forward to as we go over the next sort of 6 to 12 months?
Everything, right? Like building is the most fun part, I think, for any entrepreneur. Like the idea of building something and seeing it come true, I think is huge. We've had some unbelievable hires. Like the talent that we have internally is so good that is very inspiring. Like to get up every day and know that you get to go work with people that you really love and appreciate and find their ideas to be meaningful and impactful to what you're doing is very exciting. So I think for me, knowing that we're going to be adding some additional people this year, it's scary because when you're small, every person has such a huge impact that you have to kind of make those hires right. But if we can continue to follow the process that we have and find more people like we have, we're going to be sitting in a really good spot.
Oh, very cool. And what do you think is attracting those people to join your business? Is it the culture? Is it the mission?
So. I hope it's all of that, right? Yeah. Like I think you want to be the company that people want to go work with. Yeah. And that's kind of how we found the people that we have found. That again, the industry is so small. Like the good people tend to talk to the good people, and if you're asking our best agents for advice on, and that's kind of been how we've found people. But hopefully our culture is one where we're finding people that actually want to help people, right? Like they want to make a difference. And I think that's in its own kind of draws it in. The other thing is like, we're very transparent on who we are and who we aren't. Yeah. And a lot of that vets out people in general anyway.
Yeah, completely. And it's nice to have, as you said, in a context that's so constantly changing, I guess, at the moment, to be a sort of safe haven must make a real difference for quite a lot of people.
Yeah. And at the agency level, right? They're used to carrier people coming in with a very bad message right now. And it's not fun for those people either. Like, it's not fun for anyone at that table when it's like, hey, I know you have a book of 1,000 customers. They're not going to be able to get a policy next year. Like, no one at that table is having a fun conversation. When we're coming in and we're saying, hey, we now have, everyone else is pulling out, we're jumping in. That's a different message. And hopefully that will continue to attract the people that want to be having a more fun conversation.
Yeah, that's exciting. It's that interesting. I think it's a Warren Buffett mantra: be hungry where others are fearful.
Exactly.
Kind of saying, right? How are you landing that with your backers and your reinsurers and so on? How do you reassure them to say, no, this is the right time to be going in because of the way we're doing it, or similar? How do you position it to them?
Yeah, I mean, we've had just extreme luck and fortune with the people that we get to work with. Convex and Concert, the two companies that we're working with right now, they're just the best and the brightest, right? Like, the people at Convex are there for a reason, and they look at things through a different lens than everybody else, and they're open to hearing a story, right? They're open to looking at ideas and approaching things differently. So our main two underwriting contacts there are brilliant.
Yeah.
And we rely on them very heavily for kind of everything that we've ever taken to the table. But we also have a history of, almost 10 years of working with them. So even though the company's new, the relationship has been there, and it's proven. But yeah, we're lucky.
Very cool. And because you've introduced a 10-year horizon, historically, I'm going to be brave and ask you to be brave and say 10 years forwards, how do you imagine this space changing? We've got all these AI trends and so on at the moment, which is, how much of that will be hype in 10 years? Who knows? Impossible question, but
I think we know things are going to change and evolve, and you alluded to like Lemonade earlier. This Insurtech phase, I don't want to say bubble, but whatever, the phase that we've gone through in Insurtech, which is needed. Like, it's a very old, to your point, it's the old antiquated business, and we move slower than everybody else. We just do. But I think the thing that has come out of the last 5-10 years that will continue to prove itself moving forward is people want an agent. They want to deal with a human being when it comes to protecting the things that are most important for them, especially in the high net worth space, right? Like, you've accumulated wealth, you have nice things, they're important to you. You don't want to lose the money that you've been able to make. They want a person. And I don't, that's not going to go away. I think the tools, the data, the process, those things are going to change. Like, how the insurance is procured will hopefully continue to become easier. Hopefully the data will drive better actuarial results. That's the good part, but I don't see the relationship piece ever really going away.
I guess that's where companies like yourselves come in to scale what any one great relationship person can achieve.
Yes.
So I guess it's
Yeah, I mean,
not much use if they can only help one person per day.
No.
Kind of thing.
No, and if just like internally looking at what the next 10 years looks like, our technology drives internal efficiency. Like, that's really important for us, because then we have time to go actually work with the people who are doing the job, working with agencies and agents. And the technology we make hopefully does the same thing for them, so that they have actual time to spend with their customers instead of living in this world that they're living in now, which is like an endless task list, an endless email list, and voicemails are full, right?
Yeah.
That's not super fun.
No, not at all. And you mentioned you've got your own in-house tech and a team, I guess, dedicated to that. What are their views on sort of how quickly the technology world is moving right now? Does it feel like we're all going to be even more left behind if artificial intelligence has its way, or are people more sort of skeptical of some of the noise? Where's that?
I think we're embracing it, right? Yeah. Like, and it is impacting our developers every day. Like, they're using it for a lot of things, and we're using AI in a lot of places that even 6 months ago I don't think we were anticipating using it.
Interesting.
I think that the big advantage that we have with our development side of the house. So Carson Kipfer and Greg Blasco, two of our 4 co-founding partners, they started a tech company literally out of their dorm, 20 years ago. And they were never insurance guys. They were tech guys. Carson is a UX design genius, and Greg can build literally anything.
Yeah.
So CTO, CDO kind of roles, and not having the insurance background has been a really good thing because they ask a lot better questions because they look at it from a tech perspective, not an insurance perspective.
Yeah.
They're learning way more about insurance than I think they ever wanted to learn. But it's been kind of eye-opening for us because we're brought into more of a tech development process, right? Of like, let's start with what we're trying to accomplish and let's look at the issues that are standing in our way and solving them. Versus I think why the industry tends to move slow in the insurance space is you're really starting with the insurance piece. And then you're like, how do we get the technology to work with it instead of flipping that?
Completely, yeah. We've had, in particular, as I'm sure you'll be seeing as you go around the London market during your visit, quite a lot of Londonisms that we've spent a long time trying to find ways of doing.
For sure.
Digital versions of. It's like, how do we make that anchor stamp in a digital form? Right. This is the kind of the funniest one we always used to get was what the Lloyd's building really needs, in terms of technology, is a system to see how long the queue is at each box, so that we know when to queue up, and so we don't queue up at the wrong box. So it's, as you say, quite grounded in the minds of insurance people.
It is, but it's worked. I mean, it's a great industry to be a part of, and no matter where you're at in the tech journey. And it's probably really funny for Greg, our CTO, to hear me or see me. I've been tending to speak a lot about technology, and I think it's pretty humorous for him because I'm probably the one that fights technology the most in our company personally. Yeah. Like that's a hard thing for me historically to embrace. I know it's necessary and I'm trying to get better, but being around for 20 years, used to doing things, in a very personal matter, I've always believed it's more art than science, and come to find out you really need both.
Yeah, no, completely. And it's nice to hear that you've got such a rounded team. And the other member of your co-founders was also called Ben, which is quite funny. So maybe we'll have to do a follow-up episode in the future where Jerod interviews Ben. And
oh, I love that idea.
We could try to
there we go.
achieve something there. But I've got a thumbs up from the Cordy and the podcast team. So
let's do it.
But no, for sure, it's a really exciting business. Is there anything else you want to share? Any news or how to get in touch or find out more before we start to wrap up?
I'm monoline.com. If you want to learn more, go take a peek. I think this has been fun. We really appreciate you having us on, and it's always good to just learn more as well, right? Like especially in the phase that we're in. I think the advice kind of to give to anyone is just like jump in, focus on it, figure it out, stick with it, right? Like there's a need for more solutions for sure, and it's a massive market. So
yeah, and I think a lot of people listen to this podcast in the hopes that they'll hear wisdom from people who've been there and done it, and your advice I think is invaluable there. Good. And likewise, I've learned a lot today about personal umbrella.
More than you ever wanted to know.
I knew nothing about personal umbrella before, but now it's quite exciting. So thank you for educating me as well.
No, appreciate it.
Look forward to following the Monoline story from here. Thanks again, Jerod, for coming on the show.
Appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thanks for tuning in to the Reinsurance Podcast. If you enjoyed our show, don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a review to let us know how we're doing, preferably 5 stars. For more insights and updates, follow us on LinkedIn and visit our website at supercede.com/podcasts. You'll find the links in the show notes.